1. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nooners of Locations and Lore, the third installment. Today we have the Iron Islands. I am Johnny B. Crazy. I have John St. Baptiste on with me today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And please join us in the chat. We're going to have a blast. John St. Baptiste, how are you today? And can you give us a little bit, give us the reason why you picked Iron Islands, my friend?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on your channel, Johnny. I really appreciate it. I chose the Iron Islands for a number of reasons. If you look at the map, the Iron Islands hardly take up any space in all of Westeros, yet they're considered just as powerful as the Reach and Dorne in the north. I mean, they're considered in the same category. I find the culture extremely interesting. I find their back history extremely interesting, and come on, because Vikings. Gotta love some Vikings. Vikings.
Well, they reap, they rave, they plunder, they pillage, they do all the good things you want to do. A great seafaring nation, pretty much unstoppable on the ocean, and unstoppable for thousands of years, right? And we have basically 7 main islands you see there. Great Wick, Old Wick, Harlaw, Orkmont, Pike, Black Tide, and Sawcliffe. The main ones are like Great Wick and Old Wick. Great Wick is rich in iron ore and tin ore, and another metal, I think it's lead. Also, we have Old Wick, which is the holiest place. I think Naga's bones are located there as well. A great sea beast, something we'll get into later, which may even be a shipwreck made of weirwood because of the way the thing is described. Also, and you have Harlaw, which is the most populous of the islands. Yeah, John, to start off, we have their gods, and we did basically a stream on this, the Drowned God, and we'll talk a little bit about it here. They have basically 2 deities, opposing deities, the Drowned God and the Storm God. Yeah, thoughts?
Well, the Drowned God and the Storm God, it's interesting for a number of reasons. That the way their religion is set up, it's a very different take on dualism than what we're used to in, say, Zoroastrianism or a lot of your Gnostic beliefs. But it's still a duistic concept. And because they're both destruction deities, but they're different types of destruction deities. And as we talked about on our religion channel, like, I very much think of worship of the Drowned God as almost a dark mirror of Christianity.
It really is, and if you think about both deities, they're gray. And you have the Grey Irons, the Greyjoys, the Grey King, many different things that tie this all together. And they are a gray people. They live on the edge of morality, wouldn't you say? Something of that nature.
Yeah, because they do have their set of morals and ethics, but it's not what anyone else in Westeros really would accept, and I don't think it's what any of us would accept either. But it is very ingrained, and it is very rigid and strongly believed in. It's kind of like you think about. It is a bizarre metaphor to make, but like the Mayans, with their human sacrifice and everything like that, like, still they were very, or no, I'm sorry, not the Mayans. Well, the Mayans probably sacrificed humans too. The Aztecs definitely did. But to them, it was a form of religious supplication. Like, they were, for lack of a better term, God-fearing people.
Well, and the Mayans aren't even as isolated as I would say the Iron Islanders are. And it seems like their origins are very mysterious, right? They claim to come before the first men. They didn't have any giants or children to contend with, so the old gods are not of the Iron Islands. And with that isolation, you can, and the fact that there's only a thin layer of topsoil, your point about the Mayans, you can't grow anything there. So you have to be a little more ruthless in your survival aspects. And it's portrayed all throughout Iron Island history. You got as well the sea stone chair, that's the oily black stone that is the same as the base of the high tower in Old Town. And I know you want to get into that.
Well, the sea stone chair, I will touch on, because I think that we could make an entire stream just about that. And the oily black stone and where it might have come from and what it might be. There are some great theories out there that some other content creators have made, and I have my own theories. But the thing that I find most interesting is that it is obviously not from the Iron Islands, and it is obviously not from any part of Westeros. And it either, by their beliefs, was a gift from the Drowned God, or it's a piece of a meteor. Especially since we've got Krakens here. I mean, let's talk about the Kraken in the room. GRM loves him some H.P. Lovecraft. And you've got all these bizarre meteors and, that demonic life come from and things like that. So I think, it might just be a nod to that. It might just be, GRM, like a lot of great writers, what they do, I think we've talked about this on other streams before. They're like an amazing juggler, and they throw a bunch of balls in the air, and they catch the ones that count, and the other ones they just forget about, and they just float in the air, and you never hear about them again.
It's super intriguing, and I love everything that Jeremy uses. It could just be a nod. We may never, I don't think we'll ever get the real answer to it. But it could be the expansion of Valyria. It could be a few outposts from that, akin to Rome, how they had a few expanding outposts, and even akin to the Vikings, how they had outposts in places they never have thought, historians never thought they had been. And the Iron Islanders believe they come from the Sunset Sea, from west of Westeros. That's where they claim their origins. Maesters dispute this and say that it's not true. But they are a different breed of people, man, and I could definitely believe that they come from a different land.
Yeah, well, they don't look like First Men. They certainly don't look like Andals. They don't act like First Men, and they certainly don't act like Andals. They have, as I said, their own set of morals and ethics, but they're pretty strong in what they believe in. And I could easily believe that they did come from somewhere else, from west of Westeros. I don't think that a concept like that gets that ingrained in you, especially since everyone else who they come into contact with has such, you have Garth the Greenhand, Bran the Builder, all these legends that these people identify with as their first people from the first men, from the first migration. The Iron Islanders don't have that. They don't think that. They don't believe that. They say, no, we came from an entirely different place, or even possibly we were here first.
Yeah. I mean, they know nothing of the old gods, and it's seemingly like they brought their culture with them and stayed isolated with it and kept to it, something they held on to. For all we know, they could have been escaping a extinction level event in the past from the land they come from. Could have migrated just as adventurers and landed on the Iron Islands. it begs to question why they didn't really expand. I know they went up all the way to Harrenhal, but they stayed isolated and in their ways. Let's talk a little bit about the old way, paying the iron price, and every captain of his ship is a king, the king of that ship.
Yeah, it gets back to those kind of, well, for one thing, you were touching on Harrenhal. Like, if you look through the books, the Iron Islanders can really, at least thus far, not properly be defeated unless they either A, turn on themselves, or B, go away from the ocean. And I think there's some serious import to that. Especially since there are all these myths and legends, I guess you'd say, where they came from west of Westeros, and even beyond the Lonely Light, which is as far west as anybody sailed, except for possibly Alysanne. Isn't that her name?
Alyssa, is it Alyssa Fairman?
Yeah,
I think. And then she changed her name to something I can't remember at this point.
Nor can I,
but
there's a lot to digest here. So
they did find an outcrop of islands that they named Rhaenys, Visenya, and Aegon.
Right.
And yeah, no one knows how far she made. Corlys Velaryon supposedly saw her ship in a shy like 50 years later.
Right.
So it begs the question, what the hell happened to her?
Plus, they didn't have properly working clocks, so how does she really know that it was further west? Because that's how you find longitude.
Yeah, and it was, she did talk about making it to Ling and Ashai going west, or possibly even finding other lands. So it goes along that whole trade route as well. That's really what they were looking for, trade. And Corlys Velaryon, not to get off topic, but that's how House Velaryon became basically the wealthiest house in Westeros for a while, was because of how great a sailor he was and how much shit he brought back. And that's really the only people that have ever rivaled the Iron Islanders, but it was only for a short time.
Agreed. And, for them, and for the Iron Islanders, it wasn't just one family. It's every inhabitant is part of their culture. For commoners, 7 out of 10 are fishermen, because it's so important, because like you were saying, bad topsoil, things like that, like it's hard to grow plants there. I mean, I hope they can at least grow like some sort of citrus vegetables, or Iron Islanders probably have the worst teeth around. But 7 out of 10 are fishermen. And that goes back to what we were talking about. Like, the most petty fisherman with the smallest boat, who goes out for, herring, and there's a whole list of what they fish for, which is basically the same fish that you fish for in the North Sea. But sardines. Love me some sardines. But on his ship, or her ship, they are the captain. They're the king of that ship. It is their place. Nobody else can take authority over that. If say you and I each have our own vessel, if I were to come on your vessel, I don't care if I'm coming off of a reaver and you've got a fishing ship, you're king on that ship. Like, it's just part of their culture. It's a very respect a person and what they've done type of culture. You've got the whole thing with thralls. Like, yes, they take thralls, they take slaves, they take sex slaves, they
salt wives.
Rape.
You have.
Well, salt wives are different than slaves, but
no, they're not. But the more salt wives you have, the more prowess.
Right. Absolutely. And comparing thralls to slaves is different to an extent, because it's not like slavery in Essos.
Yeah, thralls have liberties, right? They get a home. Even their kids at some point can become ironborn.
Yeah, if you are born on the Iron Islands, you are ironborn. I no matter what your origins, no matter if you're born on the Iron Islands, you're ironborn, and it is a really weird dichotomy to their culture. And I'm not saying I remotely agree with a lot of it, but I do find it very interesting. I find their whole set of ethics and morals that people may not agree with, but that they adhere to. You don't see a lot of backsliding in their cultural beliefs. You don't see a lot of,
The only time you did was when House Horror was in control, and they were basically half Andal in the eyes of most of the Ironborn. They had to live under their rule because they were so damn strong at the time, but they weren't well liked because they weren't considered full Ironborn. And I think that's really interesting.
They weren't living on the Iron Islands.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I was done. Yeah, they'd have a Rock King and a Salt King, and it'd basically be the Salt King was almost like the heir, and the Rock King was the older, more distinguished. Now, it gets murky later, but, you also, and this was during the time of the Grey King and the Age of Heroes. Later, we get the Kingsmoot and all of that. Not much later, and I know you want to talk about the Grey King a little bit, and he was one of the heroes from the Age of Heroes. And I know you see him as a different figure. I see him kind of as a Prometheus figure. He brought fire to man, to Earth. He basically taunted the storm god into striking the ground, and then thus came fire. And he carved the first boat from Ig. YGG. It's a demon tree that fed on flesh. Sounds a lot like a weirwood to me. What do you think?
Ig phonetically is taken from Yggdrasil, which is the world tree. Which we're talking about Viking culture here. You got to throw that in a bit. It's just part of it. It gets into the whole how well studied GRM is. I think it's interesting. I wonder if something important is going to happen on Orkmont, because the root of the word orc is the Latin word orcus, which means hell. Orkmont's hardly even mentioned, but I've just always wondered about that since the first time I read these books. I'm like, And then in Old English, it just meant evil.
But that is very interesting. I mean, the Grey King did defeat the Naga too, which is basically, I guess, described as a sea dragon.
Right, or even conceptually as Midgar. George knows so much about mythology and pulls so much of that in. I actually have something I wrote about similarities between Odin and different characters. And one of the big ones is Euron, who we'll touch on towards the end of this, he said, which I think is good, ideal. But, to make this culture the culture that we appreciate them to be, a lot is drawn from Viking culture. And, you were talking about outposts. I mean, they have Lonely Lake, where the Farwinds live, which is the furthest west spot that's recognized as part of the Iron Islands. I think, what is it, 8 days you have to sail?
Yeah, I believe so.
And then going back to your Grey, it says in the quote right there, people sail past it looking for other lands and riches, and all they see is the Grey Sea. The ones who make it back. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, It's got to be a vet. I mean, they have awesome ships. It's amazing no one's made it back yet. Or if they have made it, maybe they didn't want to come back. We know
Yeah.
Jerem has confirmed that this is Earth, so we can assume that there's definitely an America over there. And so, how far we'll ever get with that in the story, I don't know. But I feel like the Alyssa Fairman, her ship ending up in the Shy, her closeness with Rain, I think it was Rain. No, Rihanna. Don't quote me on that. But sometimes it makes me think that she could be Quaith.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that theory. I'm not sure if I've accepted that theory, but I do like it.
It needs more evidence. I think if it's possible, we'll see it in Fire and Blood too. That's what we'll get seeing. And something that's fun to talk about is well, I don't know, Galen Whitestaff. I mean, come on, that's straight. That's straight up freaking oh my god, a Gandalf. Like, he's basically the first drowned priest. He had him a staff to smite people that were ungodly.
For Moses.
And it was, I don't know, it's fun. I love how Jern does this. He seems to throw things from your favorite mythology, lore, and books all in one. And we know he loves Tolkien. And Tolkien, Cthulhu, and all this shit mixed together. He's a wizard, huh? That's why he is Sam Tarley.
I've never thought about it, but he does kind of look like an older Sam Tarley would.
I think one time he said that's his character. That's who he is.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying physical appearance.
Yeah, even down to the moon face in the books. It's pretty funny. They're one of the few people that have ever, well, they're the only people that have ever sacked Old Town. Even they couldn't get into the High Tower. But the Ironborn are the few that have sacked Old Town. I believe it was King Corrid, the Cruel, I believe. I think he reigned for about 75 damn years. And he was one of the few people ever to sack Old Town, which, if you haven't looked up on Old Town, Clarissa Thompson will be on for that. It is not impenetrable, but it's
damn hard.
Yeah, and it's pretty much only accessible by sea because they got everything else covered off. Them high towers, I tell you what, they're a lot smarter than people give them credit for. Yeah, they're like the little fingers of history. So, Balon Blackskin, what an interesting character. Tell me a little bit about him, man.
Well, he was a badass. I mean, he walks on to every ship that he takes, every place that he goes, an axe in one hand, a hammer in one hand, and just drove terror, absolute terror, into everyone he came across. Now, we do have to take into consideration that the Iron Islanders have never been really big on the whole literacy thing. So the majority of recorded history about them was recorded by the people who they defeated. So there's going to be a skewed view there. But kind of almost reminds me of Blackbeard.
You know what I just thought of, too? I'll throw this in your brain. What if they maybe... I feel like they possibly could be from Valyria. I only say this because what if it sounds... If this guy is not an other, and Blackskin doesn't sound like an other, it sounds like Valyrian steel armor. Regular steel shattered on its armor or glanced off. Nothing could penetrate his skin. And when you think about black skin, that's the only thing I can put into context that is black. That makes sense to me. Now, of course, it could be anything else, but with the illiteracy thing, and definitely passed down through time, and we know that Valyrian steel armor is not very common.
Or maybe,
wow.
I mean, well, while we're speculating and throwing out tinfoil here, I'm going to bounce off yours. And maybe their myths are true. They went to Valyria, and he paid the iron price for some Valyrian steel armor.
Yeah. It'd be whole, like, okay, so history repeats itself, and it makes sense to me. It'd be Euron all over again, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can see this. I see a lot of Euron mixed in here, and I think it's purposefully done. He's pegged as a horrible, horrible person, even to his own brother, Victarion. But what is his main purpose here? We know that Jern doesn't just give you black, evil characters, aside from maybe like Craster. I think that we're going to find out a little bit more about Euron. I know we're getting into speculatory.
No, I like speculation. I mean, that's part of what I love about the Iron Islands. I will throw one shout out here. If you have the opportunity to check out Crowfoot's daughter on the Disputed Lands and her stuff about the Iron Islands, I'm not going to get into the mythology like she does here because we're talking more about just straight up story. But it's some really awesome stuff. It's given me a ton of food for thought. Kind of influenced some of my thoughts about that entire culture. But we were talking earlier about my views on like the Grey King and the mythological period and so forth. And my personal view, I don't think that 8,000 years was 8,000 years. I think it was a much shorter period of time. And I also think that a lot of these legendary figures are a number of people kaleidoscoped. Or I'm sorry, not kaleidoscoped, telescoped into a single character. There were a number of different people who had that same name, and they're accredited with all this stuff. Like
wow. Do you know what just hit me when you said that? Naga's bones, a great beast that could kill leviathans, kill all these things. Wasn't said to be bigger than a leviathan, but the ribs are still there, and there's a mention of dragon. What if a Valyrian tried to take the island or landed there at some point? This is where you can get the Valyrian steel armor. This is where the Naga's bones can come from. And also a few other things that we'll probably find while we're talking about this. I don't know. That would be because, they keep talking about how Valyrians may have had an outpost here or there, because they were explorers. They were expansionists. They were basically colonized places, for lack of a better term. And this goes back to the whole the painted table on Dragonstone. That had to get there somehow. It wasn't just as if it magically appeared. And one lifetime of dragon riding, or maybe even two, isn't going to get you that kind of detail. It's going to take a few generations, I think, and I believe there was probably maps of Westeros before they ever, Aenys the Exile ever made it to Dragonstone, I think. Because Dragonstone was already an outpost, I believe, right?
Yeah, Dragonstone had been an outpost for quite some time, and if I remember correctly, the Targaryens always held it. That's why they were able to go there when the Dreamer had her prediction. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there are a lot of things that allude to the Valyrians having been to Westeros long before that, having outposts. I think George all says that the base of the High Tower was made by the Valyrians. I've always felt that way. Yeah, I don't think there's, at least in my mind, until I see it written down, that's my headcanon anyway.
Oh, I mean, you have the labyrinth of the bottom of the high tower. And I need to get into this in the other one, but it's a lot like sounds to me a lot like the underneath workings of the Roman Colosseum as well. The mazes and trapdoors, and I don't know if there's trapdoors, but it's basically like a labyrinth.
Or Knossos in Greece.
Ooh.
Or
Or
Crete.
you got Crete. Yeah.
Yeah, the Minoans.
We're getting deep here, John.
Tidbits and clues. And the Minoans, by the way, were a culture that lived on small islands, but ruled a huge swath of land. Now, they did theirs by trading rather than reaving, but
Some who think that they were Atlantis. Some who think that. It's a lot of speculation on Atlantis. We'll get into that another day. Let's get back to the topic because we like to get into nice philosophical talks here, and
yeah, you and I
John just get off
when we're talking.
off topic. It's all good. Yeah, this kind of goes back to me with their tradition and where this god came from. You have these, and this seems like a natural progression of a god of a seafaring country or a seafaring people, especially one that possibly escaped from slavery and came here through tough times and lost a lot of people in the storm. And some people drowned and washed up on shore. And they woke up on this land and they were reborn again. Holy shit, I'm blowing my own mind here. I need to make a video on that.
Like the Hebrew exile. Or Exodus. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way. I've always thought they're just a bunch of hard asses who came out of the seas and shagged seals and started. And when anybody came to mess with them, they were just like, "Hey, we got boats."
And it could even be that they were sent here by the Valyrians to develop the islands as their slaves. And this is where this thraldom comes from, this tradition of keeping a slave-type people. Because, yes, the Valyrians, seemingly, they were called slaves, but if you read about it, it's not as if they had some sort of freedom. They had enough freedom to where they could go to a dude and ask them to kill themselves. They had a little bit of freedom, even though, like the thralls, holy shit, we're drawing huge connections. The thralls of the Islanders work in the mines, the toiling, horrible mines. It parallels perfectly the mines that the slaves had to work in Valyria and how many people died there. It's
Not quite
the worst
as hot.
job. Huh?
Not quite as hot.
Not quite as hot, but in both places, this is the worst job you can have, and the people that actually live there don't do it. We might have stumbled on something here, Mr. Baptiste. But yeah, I'll let you go on with a little more whatever the hell you want, because
let my people go.
Because this is supposed to be showcasing you a little bit, so I'll let you get into.
Oh no, that's all right. I love talking
more
this
rants.
stuff. Love talking this stuff. Okay, so we talked about Bale and Black Sea. I know you really wanted to touch on the Red Kraken because I know really interests you. I mean, 22 salt wives. He claimed 100. My one big point and thought about the Red Kraken is when he died, he never took a rock wife. He kind of pulled an Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let the power go to the victor.
That is a great comparison. He said he went all the way as far as old geese by the time he was 14 years old, and he did all these things by the very young age, just like Alexander did. And the one woman he never tired of, and he had his Valyrian steel blade, which was the only woman he ever loved. Nightfall. He got it while reaving.
And he took that with the Iron Press.
He did, and where is that now? is a big question. I think Euron, this.
No, no. There's a family who has it now.
Oh, they do?
Yes, but there's a family who took it after he died because of the civil war that happened. That's why the Lannisters were able to take them down.
Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the chat. That'd be something for the chat to do.
Yeah, come on, do your jobs, guys.
Dalton Greyjoy. A great name. Anybody named Dalton probably usually drives like a NASCAR or rides on a dirt track or a dirt bike. He's usually a really cool dude. He battled at the Stepstones.
He's sponsored by Foxfire, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's pretty interesting because he seemed very smart and wise for his time. He didn't really take part in the Dance of Dragons. He got asked by Rhaenyra and even Alicent and kind of turned him down, and then decided to basically fight for Rhaenyra and just fuck the Lannisters up. Basically took everything but Casterly Rock. And then what else did he destroy, John? It wasn't much as far as the war went. He just caused some havoc, man.
Yeah, he did what Ironborn do best, which is take it and run.
The way he got his name too. This is the best way I've ever heard anyone get their name. Battle at the Stepstones, slayed dozens of people, took a dozen wounds, and his whole body was covered red. From then on, he was known as the Red Kraken, drenched in his own blood. Like, fucking, that is badass, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty. A
dozen wounds. It goes back to the prologue of a Game of Thrones with how many, there's a lot of weird. Jeremy likes to use these same numbers, and I want to decode it. I'm pretty sure somebody has decoded it because 3, 12, these sacred geometry numbers, these the 12, like the apostle, all these sacred religious numbers are strewn throughout this whole series, and it just has me intrigued. I can't stop seeing numbers everywhere, man.
Oh no, I know exactly what you mean there. My one thing interesting about the Red Kraken is basically all the information we have from him about him as readers comes from the Grey Rats. And it's their take, their concept of him. And does his story to you very much mirror Maegor?
Kind of, but they are. It's Maegor, but it's weird how they paint him.
Sorry,
it's almost in a good light.
It's a bit differently.
Well, it's almost in a good light, but not. Like, it makes him look bad at the same time while he helped the realm, so to speak. Like, they're still just Ironborn scum. It's like they have this preset disposition, and they're going to, right? These are the only people that have ever conquered there. They've already, I don't know if they raided the Citadel the last time they were there, but they sacked all of Old Town. And the High Towers are, in my opinion, behind the Citadel as the Bank of Brava. It's funny because you have a lot of these same things on the different sides of the world. You got the Bank of Bravos and the Faceless Men that are one and the same to me. Now, people have differing opinions on that. But then you have the Citadel, the High Towers, and the Starry Sept, which are all one and the same to me as well.
Oh, you're preaching the choir, brother.
But it just, yeah, so I would agree with you there on that point. Basically, long story short, long Johnny rant, I agree.
I think that rereading Fire and Blood, I saw so many correlations between the Red Kraken and Maegor.
His throat was slit while he was asleep by just some random chick named Tess who killed herself afterwards. I mean, it's very suspicious things. I don't know how much we'll find out about it. I mean, I've read this part in Fire and Blood, but I'm doing another reread, and I'm hoping to find some sort of clue, but they don't give you much other than the fact of this man was so badass that he could have been a threat to the Citadel. Could have been a threat to Old Town.
Yeah.
Because he seemed to have a better disposition than Euron, but at least as badass, no doubt. So I could see them taking him down, and then just saying, "Oh, some random chick slit his throat." It just seems weird, right? But he did supposedly bed thousands of women, and one of those women are going to be scorned at some point. So, as usual, I always poke holes in my own theory, but I like.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just poke holes in my own theory because I like thinking about it from both sides. That's why I can never, stick with a theory good, because I can poke holes in everything.
I was just saying I think most of them are going to be scorned because they didn't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
Theory.
And it could simply be just that, but I think the way he's painted is slightly harsh, considering that he actually did help the realm in the end. And you can't say it was any worse than any of the previous Grey Kings, the Iron Island Kings, whatever you would like to call them. I can't think of a good term to put on them.
Squidbillies.
But he seems to be, to me, one of the last great Ironborn.
One of the last powerful.
Up until we get to Balon, who was don't let the show fool you. That was a bad man.
Yeah, Balon was a badass with strong ideas.
Red Kraken, but
who made poor decisions. Made a lot of really poor decisions.
His dad's the one that brought the Maesters in too. And his dad was like 6'6", huge, but he was a really nice dude, supposedly. And he gets kind of a glowing review. And probably because he let the Maesters in. This is think about that. Euron Greyjoy's father is the first person to let the Maesters on the Iron Islands. Other than that, no one's been able to really get there, or anyone that has, they've been killed.
Thralls that could read or write became scribes.
Yeah, that's where they got it from. So you didn't have, and that's why the Maesters, like a lot of things, they'll pass off. They weren't there to see it themselves, so they're not going to necessarily take everything into account. That's kind of the problem you have with the Maesters. And been doing
that, and they have their own agenda, and they're the Illuminati of Westeros, but
they are, and I think a lot of them are doing things that they don't even know they're doing. That is set in their ways, their curriculum, everything. Their beliefs boil down to making an agenda. And you
roboting a bit, Johnny.
And there's definitely a few people. What's that?
I just said you were roboting a bit.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Either way, like they. I just think the Maesters in general want a more civilized society to where the outcome is more predictable and you don't have variables such as magic and superstition and even gods to an extent. I think they use religion as a form of control as well. But that goes back into the whole Illuminati conspiracy, Grey Rats conspiracy, or whatever. But go back. Take it away, my friend. You want to talk about the Greyjoy Rebellion?
Yeah. So Balon Greyjoy, I think, I don't want to say his heart was in the right place. That would be a bad way to put it. But he had a point. He had a concept. He had an idea. But he really went about it the entirely wrong way, and he forgot, like we were talking about earlier, the Iron Islanders are always in power, in control, as long as they're near the sea and not fighting each other.
And it's funny. You got to respect Balon Greyjoy. Robert Baratheon took him, was in front of him. He said, I didn't pledge any oath to you. You can't kill me and call me traitor. And Robert Baratheon just laughed at him. Dumb ass Bobby B, man. I swear. The dude is too much of a man's man for his own good. He respected him for that. Well, bow now. And he lets Balon bow. Euron has his time to build himself up when he could have probably just put Victorion on there or had him have another King's Moot. This right here was the catalyst for Euron to basically build up his kingdom, because Balon was broken after this. Now, even though he put up a big fight, he was broken. Theon was taken, his other two sons killed, and oh my God, the Theon chapters are so jacked up, man. So hard to read Theon's inner thoughts because they're
and you know, when I reread all of Theon's chapters and thoughts about Balon and everything involving Balon, you know, when the War of the Five Kings broke out, it's kind of like that guy about 10 years older than me who's never ridden a bike before who decides to buy himself a $2,500 Harley. Like it was his midlife crisis.
Yeah, he saw that opportunity, right? The realm was a little bit up in chaos. You don't really know what you're getting with Bobby B, but the Targaryens are overthrown, and that's the only people that have really been oppressing them all these years. So in his mind, he's like, oh, opportunity for the greatness of the Iron Islands.
Oh, no, I'm talking about during the War of the Five Kings.
Oh, when he pretty much set out, didn't he? Oh, the War of the Five Kings. What the hell am I talking about? Yeah, he survived the longest.
Yeah.
I can say he should have gave it, because Theon taking Winterfell. Yeah, I don't agree with what Theon did, but they should have kept Winterfell. They could have kept Winterfell, or they could have at least held it long enough to attack another position. But they're set in their ways. They are of the sea. If you can't get there by boat, they're not even good on horses. Like when you see Yara coming in on a horse, or any of the Iron Islanders that Theon's with in the books on a horse, it's like they just aren't used to it. It's the same way when you hear of Dothraki walking, because they're always on the horse, and when they walk, they're like super bow-legged, and they're all funny and awkward. Like if a Dothraki's on the ground, all you gotta do is run away from him, because he ain't catching you. You know, because his legs are all twisted up from sitting on a horse from like 2 or 3 years old. And it's the same thing here. You know, they're not used to anything but the sea, and the land is like the poison water to the Ironborn. You know.
Right. Yeah. I've never really thought about how the two cultures mirror each other, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Oh, Jerem does this. Opposite sides mirror each other. Like I've been seeing it everywhere, man.
But you know, yeah, I kind of think of like Balon's little grasp during the War of the Five Kings is like his little midlife crisis. Hey, Rob, you keep your land, I'll keep my land. Let's go kill some lions.
And you know, I know, right? And he was the one who brought back the old way before he got crushed. You know, he brought back all of these things, and he had accomplished so much at a young age, and had everything taken from him, and he just had to sit there for 14 years and have nothing, and basically have his son be held hostage. After that, I think he went a little crazy. You know, he gave Theon up for dead, and pretty much Theon is still dead to him, even after Theon comes back.
Agreed.
And he doesn't even try to teach Theon. He's just fucking hard on him. But he's taking out his pain on his son, because when he looks at Theon, he sees his other two dead children. He sees that defeat. He sees that humiliation.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. Certainly. You know, which, you know, that's part of the culture. It really does go back to that, because I think in Balon's own eyes, when he knelt and gave up Theon as a hostage, he paid the gold price.
That's a good point. He did.
I mean,
in a
because
sense.
he had 2 surviving sons. One was Theon, or 3. I'm sorry. Then you got Victarion, who's about thick as a wall, and then you got Euron, who's essentially exiled.
Yeah, he's the crazy one, and that's saying something when you read Victarion's chapters, because that man's nuts. That's a fucking serial killer right there, but not a smart one. He's the Neanderthal serial killer. I love Victarion actually. I like. He's like, I don't know. He's like my tough, mean ass uncle that's cool when you get a couple drinks in him. You know. And back to that, when Aegon outlawed, it made me think of something. When Aegon outlawed reaving, they went to having actual iron coins to pay the iron price, which I found fucking hilarious, man. They had gotten down to this point where they were actually paying iron coins, using that for money on the islands. Now, of course, they still did go reaving and stuff. But if you can't rob the shoreland and all that next to you, you're not going to have a bunch of wealth. And what they did have aplenty was tin, lead, and iron ore. So, there's that. I don't know how many iron pieces it takes for a gold dragon, but I had to assume it's like 100,000.
Tin, lead, iron, and ships. Yeah, that's the big thing. Like, Aegon outlawed reaving, but essentially Aegon outlawed reaving on lands that he was in charge of. Otherwise, you want to hit some Summer Islanders? You want to go hit Dorne? You want to go, rape, pillage, and plunder?
Stepstones?
Basically, he turned pirates into privateers. And which is another reflection of history. The English, the French, the Spanish, the Norwegians, all did that during the 17th and 18th century. And basically, you give somebody a writ of permission, and hey, it's a country we're at war with, or a country that we're not at peace with, is a better way to put it, and you can do that.
Yeah, and they were invited to definitely raid the Stepstones because the triarchy of Volantis, Pentos, and Mir were basically warring over that. Then they actually made a treaty. Anyways, it's just, and also below that, at the top of, I can't remember where the disputed lands are. All of that's kind of where they went to. Anywhere else, is up for speculation. We've seen them go past around the foot of Dorne, and Euron's made it at least all the way to Valyria. I'm sure he's been to a Shire. He said he has, right? Maybe not.
I think
we can get into Euron, so go ahead.
I think Euron's like 70% piss and 30% vinegar.
I think it's possible. I believe that. I definitely believe he had a dragon's egg now. After reading Fire and Blood, there's enough dragon's eggs out there that he could come across one. Did he throw it in the sea? I doubt it. Everybody thinks he gave it to the Faceless Man to kill his brother, which, sure, that's fine.
And by the way, I have to correct myself. Euron was not Balon's son. He was his brother.
Yeah.
That was my mistake earlier. My apologies.
Youngest brother, right? Is Victarion the youngest?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm getting
he treats them like shit. Oh my god.
Targaryen so much. Brothers and uncles and sons can all be the same person, Props
to Victarion for not killing Euron after Euron took his wife, basically. Oh, Victarion killed his wife for it, though, because that's the only thing he could legally do. He can't be a kinslayer. There's nothing as accursed as a kinslayer. And even the Ironborn stick to that code. where other people do not. That's a key. Tyrion killed his own father. Yeah, you can be mad at him, but if you actually look at it, was Tyrion justified in killing his own father? Not really. Not taking his life. Now his father possibly was trying. His father didn't set him up for the poisoning, and his father had no love for him.
Okay. I think gelding his dad would have been just fine.
Yeah, gelding, something, but
gelding him and feeding him his own cock.
But he got emotional, People get emotional when this happens. I'm not saying Tyrion's horrible for doing it, and he's a lot more gritty in the books. And people say he's awful, but I actually like Tyrion in the books as well. I don't think it would have made me mad at him in the show. He's a little more crude, like he was when you first seen him in the show. But I digress. As far as Euron goes, the Crow's Eye, it really makes me wonder what he's gonna do with Dragonbinder as well. I don't think it does what he thinks it does.
Nor do I. Or I think he knows it won't do what Victorian thinks it will.
Yeah, because it wouldn't make sense for him to get Victorian a dragon. Like, hey brother, go get yourself a dragon. I think it could kill a dragon.
Yeah.
You could have some sort of frequency that just kills it. But I don't see it being bent to his will. I think there's something more for that. Victorian got smart and got the 3 thralls, right, to blow the horn. Whereas Euron might have thought Victorian was going to blow it himself. But after seeing what the hell happened, was it on Old Wick that he blew it? That they blew it?
Yes, it was on Old Wick, I believe.
Thrall blew that, so yeah. I mean, he thinks that. I mean, I think the Night Who Smoked the Laughing Tree thinks it could be used to possibly call fireworms up, or make fireworms come up, like calling giants from the earth. That Euron's horn could be the horn of Jormungand. Which the giants from the earth would be the fireworms, explaining the Hardhome disaster going up in flames a couple of times, but got into that on the Hardhome podcast. So it's hard to see. Where do you think the horn's going, man?
The horn is kind of Euron's own way to get rid of Victorian. Oh, I think it'll call dragons. I don't think it'll control them. In fact, I think quite the opposite.
Yeah, he might get blistered. I do think Victorion's gonna live, especially with what happened with Makoro in his hand being saved by the Red God. I think Victorion's actually set up to switch religions, which I think is going to be very fun in the books.
I can follow that.
You got that would be the ultimate, because you're going to have brother against brother, I think, at the end. Not completely at the end, but Victorian, in my opinion, is the only one that can take down Euron. The only one that can get close enough, and he's the one that has all the motive and the pain that man has went through from his brother. It's like, if Euron's going to die by someone's hand, I really hope it's Victorian.
Oh, I would hope it would be Aemon, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, no, but
I mean,
maybe. I don't know. Whatever. You're killing me here. Yeah, Aemon's gonna come up. Is he still in the blackberry wine? Ha!
Yeah. Well, no, that's my point. I think of all people, that would be the most satisfying Euron death, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Euron's up near Old Town, bleeding priests, supposedly trying to call Krakens. He's got Pyat Pri with him, of all people. It's like, how the fuck does Pyat Pri? And, the last time we seen him, he was cursing Dany out and chasing her after she was running out of the House of the Undying. So it makes you wonder what he has found out here. If Euron has had his own little experience in the House of the Undying as well. And do you think we're going to see Krakens, and to what end would Euron be using them?
Oh, I hope we get Krakens. I really hope we get Krakens. I don't know. I think Euron might be able to call Krakens, but I don't know if he'll be able to control them.
I feel like he can use it to set up a trap. The blood, if you read Fire and Blood, when King Lodos, was basically defeated, saw that he was going to be defeated by Aegon, he went and drowned himself. And many other people drowned themselves during this time. And I think before that, either way, there's mention in Fire and Blood of Krakens coming up and feeding on the bodies. So this may be what Euron's trying to do. He may have tested this out before and, leave your little trap, go in where he's going to go, and whoever's coming to chase him is going to have to come through Krakens. Right. He could just have Krakens closed off the inlet to Old Town, right? And no one can get to him.
It's kind of the same. I just don't think there's any way he's going to be able to control them.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is, just using them in a general area. But we could be just
1 and 2. Should I talk about my little pet theory?
Yes, man. Yes.
Well, with the Iron Islanders, and they're the Drowned God is such a Jesus figure, and then I think, at least to me, I laughed out loud when I read that, because I kind of think of Lodos the First and Lodos the Second, who came back from the sea, as like Jim Jones and David Koresh.
They were nutters, man. They were straight up nutters, dude. And his body was never found, and they don't think the second Lodos was Lodos, but they can't say for sure. That's what's so funny, is even the masters are like, well, it's probably not him, but they're not saying it's for sure either.
Right.
Either way, the motherfucker come back to die again, and just get, I don't know, it's hilarious. His head got pickled and sent back to Aenys in a jar.
One with all the followers who drowned themselves and so forth. It really made me think of Jim Jones.
Yeah, man, don't drink the Kool-Aid, man.
Drink the Kool-Aid, guys.
Don't ever drink the Kool-Aid. Do you think so, Dany? And we'll kind of wrap up with this, and maybe a little more Euron. With Dany, she's off in Dothraki Sea. In my opinion, she's having a miscarriage, and Victarion's in Meereen. I don't think they're actually. Do you think they'll ever meet up? I'll say what I think in a minute. I don't want to taint your answer.
I would take 8-1 odds on it, but nothing bigger. Yeah, I'd take that payout, but beyond that, no.
She has to have an admiral for her fleet, right? But Germ isn't that simple.
Exactly.
I see that as...
Paying out 8-1 odds, I'd take it up, but otherwise, no.
I see that as an offer, that she may even request at some point. Because if he stays there, I think he may get appointed to that position by the counselors that have been stuck in Meereen. Strong Belwas, on that ultra slim fast diet. May like Victarion. There's some qualities to like about Victarion that I think they may use, because they're not going to just let him get away unless he just starts to fighting, which Victarion is prone to do.
Hulk smash.
But if it does call the dragons, I can see him ending up almost dying and then waking up. You know, everything else is destroyed. He's seen the actual power that is the dragons and fire, and this converts him to the red god. He survives the fire, just in the same symbolic way you would survive the drowning. I'm brilliant today.
No, seriously, that is brilliant. That's something I haven't thought about. Now I'm going to have to reread all the Victorian chapters. Thanks, Johnny.
No problem. That's what I'm here for, man. To make you think really hard.
Make me work a little more.
No doubt. Yara isn't Yara with Stannis too? And Theon just arrived there with his wisps of white hair. Do you got any predictions of what's going to happen with Theon and Stannis and Yara? Or did
Asha or Yara?
Oh, son of a bitch. The show got me. Asha. Damn it, man. I wish they wouldn't have changed that. Asha and Osha sound completely different.
Oh,
but go ahead. Sorry. Asha and Theon and Stannis. Son of a bitch. Ha!
I think she's going to survive. I think she will die.
I think she'll become
I think
Queen of the Iron Islands first, somehow.
I think she will. I don't think she's going to die ignominiously at the hands of Stannis Baratheon.
Now, you do have the King's Blood issue.
This is true. But I don't think it's going to play out that way. I won't say I'd be disappointed if it did, but she's one of my favorite characters, so I would dislike if it did. I wouldn't be disappointed. But I don't think it's going to happen. George loves throwing out his little red herrings and stuff like that, and I think that this is a wee bit too much of one.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that it's not going to. If it is, it better be done damn well, or I will be disappointed.
The only problem for me is he can't use her, right? It's not. Well, maybe he can. If Euron gets a little too crazy, Stannis may have a fleet in the end. Assuming, they took Stannis out in the show, like completely different than anything that's going to happen in the books, in my opinion. Don't you think, John?
Oh, I think Stannis' death is different in the show. I think outside of Dorne, the Iron Islands were treated more poorly than anybody in the show adaptation.
I would lie. Yeah, they're treated as very stupid. They're portrayed as very dumb.
I mean, you get that set. I love, even though it's unrealistic, I love the Theon on the beach fight. It's still going to hurt whether you got a cock or not. It
doesn't matter. No real person that's ever fought is going to kick you in the same spot 4 times when nothing's happening. They're going to go to an uppercut to the face or something. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just going to keep kicking you in the balls. He is hot pie grown up. Balls till he died.
But as a televiewer, there was a satisfaction to that scene. But I mean, if I can get my rant out of the way right now, I think the Iron Islanders were just, they were made out as dumb as opposed to this culture that has a different way they think and do things, but they're still smart. They're still canny. There's a reason everyone is terrified AF as them if they live within 100 miles of the beach. Like, there's a reason for that. And
they're from Florida.
I'll just get the elephant in the room out of the way. Oh my God. Euron fracking Greyjoy in the show. Now, I don't blame the actor. You you act
Hashtag guyliner.
you act the script you're given, you know. But Captain Euron Sparrow is not Euron Greyjoy. Like, Euron Greyjoy is a bad ass, scary motherfracker. And
Frightening.
terrifying. Like, literally terrifying. Lovecraftian terrifying. Like, literally. And, you know, the clown with the eyeliner. I think more than anything, it does a shame to the actor.
How much does it cost for an eye patch?
During Halloween, I think you can get one for like $2.
Come on. Come on. The guy has one fucking eye. It's just an eye patch. I'm sorry. I had to get my little rant out too. You can't even give him that much justice. You can't even give him a crow's eye. Like, this is not the Euron we grew up and loved. Ha! This is not the Euron we idolized and grew to aspire to.
Well, you did, anyway.
Euron Guyliner. With that, let's just get your gushing out of the way. Let's hear about the Iron Islands. Anything else you got to say, my friend?
The Iron Islands, to me, is one of the most interesting locations in the entire series of books. As I touched on before, look at the map up there in the corner. It's a tiny little area that's surrounded by this huge continent, and they're considered just as powerful as all these other areas. They're I wouldn't say as respected, but they're considered just as powerful. And there's something behind that. Maybe it comes from my personality or my culture or whatever, but you know, being this wee little group of people that can stand up to all these other big groups, I really respect. I respect the fact that they kept the gray rats out as long as possible, because they are like, hey, you're not part of our culture, and they've always been suspicious of them, and they still are, because we all know how I feel about the gray rats. That's a polite term. Maesters would be a slander. I like the fact that they've always held on to their personal ethos, whether one agrees with it or not. I like the fact that they're survivors, and they get by with what they have. Now, they do take, but they pay the iron price for it, which isn't necessarily the way I think about and look at things in the world, but I do have a lot of respect for it, and I think it's pretty cool. Also, Vikings.
Aye. You get what you earn with this culture, and you have to respect that. And you know, as I think, they escaped from Valyria, and then a dragon rider came after them, and the person known as the Grey King slew the dragon rider, and then was it Lauren Blackskin? Was that it? No, it's
Balin
Blackskin.
Yeah.
He got to pass down Valyrian steel armor. No, I had some fun people.
My one difference is I think they shagged a bunch of seals, crawled out of the ocean, and then when the Valyrians came by, they were like, "Hey, bugger, you guys! You got dragons?"
Yeah, I mean, and it is, Naga is a famous sea dragon. I wouldn't doubt if it's the bones of an actual dragon. It would make sense.
I think that might be a Johnny B. Crazy original.
Maybe.
I like the Weirwood theory, but I think that's a Johnny B. Crazy original.
I think maybe
it's an actual dragon, like Valyrian dragons.
I think it's possible. I might have to just go ahead and get on that video. But with that, man, where can we find you? Because I've had so much fun today, and I know you're doing some new stuff on your channel with American Gods. You also got some fantastic Game of Thrones playlists, and in general, you make the music come together with the people. I know I didn't say that correctly because, I'm throwing it out there for you, but you do a fantastic job, my friend. I love having you on. Let us know where they can find you, and get it wrapped up, buddy.
You can find me on YouTube, John St. Baptiste. I put out weekly playlists. They usually have a theme. Sometimes I just play whatever the hell I feel like. But generally, they always have a theme. Right now, I'm going through Game of Thrones season by season. I'm on season 6, which came out yesterday. Also, with American Gods, we are breaking it down episode by episode. Right now, we're on season 2, episode 3, because it's all current. Once we get finished with season 2, I do believe we're going back and going over season 1, episode by episode. I'm really excited because we've actually pulled a lot of people who've not watched the show. Somebody actually binged the entire first season so that they could catch up to watch this episode, and I think that's really cool. But the series is called Believe. It's also on my channel. And, so I'm really excited about that. I'm not sure what we'll do after that. Maybe talk about the book. Maybe talk about other Neil Gaiman stuff. Because Good Omens is coming out.
Mm.
And I think that's one you might like a little more than American Gods, Johnny.
Well, the literature of American Gods. We won't get into why American Gods weirds me out, but we'll, I don't have issues with it. It's just not my cup of tea at this moment as far as cinema goes.
No, I'm saying I think the show will be your
okay.
type of cinema much more.
Well, either way, I'll be jumping into these books after Game of Thrones season 8 ends. Hopefully we'll get a prequel. That's up in arms. HBO has a new head, and he stated that he doesn't even know if they will do a prequel. So we still got the books, and I'll still be delving into those. Plus, we also have many other fantastic TV shows that are going to come on, and I wouldn't doubt some sort of George R.R. Martin work is going to be turned into a television show again. Plus, you have Night Flyers coming back, and if you haven't read that novella, read that trippy shit. You find out who Alami is, and I don't know. That's all I'll give you with that. I really thank everyone for showing up, and I had a blast with you, John. This has been just fantastic. I'm a workaholic, but I'm still having fun, and I love it. Don't forget to share this out with your friends. Like it, subscribe, all that jazz, and we will see you on the next Nooners of Location and Lore.